I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training, I was driving home. I was actually thinking, regretting it. What have I done? Like I walked into a circus. It's amazing, isn't it?
Phil Egan, a very good morning to you.
How are you doing? How are you getting on?
All good, all good. So we're going to start with Borussia Dortmund here. We're basically putting you head-to-head with Jan Aga Fjortoft, who already delivered some insider knowledge on this, but your take is more important to us. Borussia Dortmund have issued another hands-off warning to Manchester United as the Jadon Sancho transfer saga rolls on. Head of football operations, Sebastian Kehl, repeated that the German side expect the winger to remain at the club. He said, "It was important to get clarity on the subject. We know about Jadon's attractiveness, but also of his importance to us. He gives our team that little extra. We're happy that he is staying." Now, Sancho, he also spoke yesterday after playing in a Dortmund friendly, and he said, "I love playing with this lot. It is a special bunch. We've got some special young players coming up. I'm really happy to share the pitch with them and guide them." Despite previous reports that personal terms had been agreed, the Manchester Evening News say that wage demands and agent fees are now complicating the move. In a word, out of 10, how likely is Sancho to Manchester United at this point?
This is before the transfer window closes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I'm down at 3. Oof. I was so far up the scale about 2 weeks ago, and yeah, I don't have much confidence that it's going to happen now. And it's interesting the way it's developing as well, that now all of a sudden you have reports coming out that next summer Barcelona and Real Madrid could join that race to sign Jadon Sancho, which is a nice little nudge to United to say, you know, you have to think about this now if you want to get it done in the next few weeks, because otherwise you're going to be in a bidding war. And also, who knows what Real Madrid or Barcelona will be like in 12 months' time. Will they be in a better position than Manchester United?
Yeah.
I'm interested in Kenny Cunningham's take from last night, Phil. Like, he was saying that he thinks Sancho is a 75 to 80 million pound player. In this market, he thinks over 120 million pound plus is far too much, which seems strange, but maybe given the current pandemic situation and clubs' financial positions, he's right. But what's a fair price for Sancho, do you think?
Well, when it comes to price tags, you know, the players obviously, they've nothing to do with it. You know, the market sets the value, but we've talked about this before, where it's not as if they have to hand over the cash straight away. So United have the money to pay it in instalments, and if Jadon Sancho makes your team better, then the transfer fee shouldn't be as big an issue. You know, like, you think back to when Liverpool signed Virgil van Dijk, people thought that is mad money to pay for a centre half that plays for Southampton, and nobody really talks about the price tag now. They just talk about how good Virgil van Dijk is. So that's the way I always look at those price tags, that sometimes it's unfair on the player, because if they don't hit the ground running, then it's what a waste of money. And fans, you know, rival fans often mock clubs for how much money they paid, but it's not as if the fans of those clubs that paid the money actually had to fork out a load of cash themselves. Obviously, I know clubs generate money through fans, I get that, but you know, if United have the money, which they do, and they want Jadon Sancho, I just think go get him and make your team better, because the signs at the end of the season, apart from the last few games, where United were very much on the up, and Sancho would continue that upward curve if they sign him.
Sticking with Manchester United, they could hijack Chelsea's deal to bring Leicester City's England left-back Ben Chilwell, who's 23, to London. According to the Mirror, an £80 million price tag has given the Blues cold feet, leaving the door open for United to woo the wing back. However, Chelsea are still the front runners to secure his signature. In 2020, is Ben Chilwell an £80 million player, and should Manchester United sign him?
It goes back to what I just said there about the price tag. I mean, how many players are worth 80 million? But Chilwell is a player that would make United and Chelsea a better team, because Chelsea have had troubles at the back. If Lampard wants to stick with 4 at the back, obviously he's tweaked it. Sometimes he's gone with a 3-4-3. Alonso definitely suits a wing back role, but Chilwell could play in an orthodox back 4. I think he's a better option than Luke Shaw, because he gives you a bit more going forward. And if United are going to continue to develop, they want more weapons to attack with, and not just coming from midfield. They need attacking full backs, and we've seen with Wan-Bissaka, certainly a work in progress in terms of what he's like going forward. A brilliant defender. You know, it's rare you see a player go by him, if ever, and he just looks uncomfortable at times. Luke Shaw is a bit better going forward than Wan-Bissaka, but unfortunately for Luke Shaw, he picks up a few injuries here and there. So I just think Chilwell is just a more dynamic defender.
There have been developments, speaking of defenders, in the emerging Shane Duffy transfer saga. Now, Celtic, Phil, are seen as the frontrunners to sign the imposing centre-back. Sportsmail say they understand that he discussed a one-year loan deal with Neil Lennon earlier in the week. West Ham, West Brom and Burnley are the other clubs linked with the Derryman. Do you believe that those Premier League clubs, first of all, want the Irish defender, and at age 28, would it be a major step backwards to swap the Premier League for the Scottish Premiership, or could he potentially go chase a 10 in a row and Champions League football?
You can definitely see Shane Duffy playing for Celtic. You can almost, if you close your eyes, you can almost imagine there's an Old Firm derby, corner comes in, Shane Duffy meets it, head into the back of the net, crowd goes wild, because I'm presuming crowds will be back in the stadiums by then. And you know, they're a little bit short in centre half. Obviously you've got Ayer and Julien at the moment. Julien was the player that gave away the penalty against Kilmarnock last weekend. So he certainly would be a good player for Celtic to bring in. If it's a season loan, yeah, he gets regular football. In terms of, from an Irish point of view, if he's playing in the Premier League, it's a better standard. I think there's no one that's going to debate that. Now, the problem is, does he become a regular for the three clubs you mentioned? You look at Burnley, they look pretty set with Tarkowski and Ben Mee. Kevin Long has to sit on the bench and kind of wait for his opportunities. So where does Shane Duffy fit into that? With West Ham, you could definitely see there's a place in the team for him, and I would say the same about West Brom. So that, you know, it's good that he has options, because I think it's pretty clear at the moment under Graham Potter at Brighton that Shane Duffy is not going to be a starter. As Adam Webster came in and pretty much got him out of the team, it was Duncan Duffy under Chris Hughton, but Graham Potter's obviously gone for Adam Webster.
Just on the Celtic one, Phil, I mean, I'm probably going to land you in a load of trouble here, but the Jimmy O'Hara quotes from last week or the week before, where he said Bournemouth is a bigger job than Rangers, and then Neil Warnock came back and kind of scoffed those, and he was saying he thinks the likes of United, Chelsea, Rangers and Celtic would more than cope with that. That was his quote. What are your thoughts on that? Like, is the level at Celtic and Rangers much different than it would be at, say, Burnley or West Ham?
I would think at the moment it's hard to tell. Like, I think the whole debate about how Celtic and Rangers would do in the Premier League is not just like you're picking them out right now with their current squad and putting them in and saying, away you go. It's all about the huge fan base that both clubs have and what that would generate in the Premier League, and obviously they'd have more money, they could get better players, and that's where the potential will be there. I don't think there'd be many Celtic or Rangers fans that would argue that if you drop the current squads right into the Premier League now, that they'd finish in the top six. Where they would finish in the Premier League, I don't know. You look at, if you were to give it a full season, Celtic are obviously a little bit ahead of Rangers at the moment. Would Celtic beat Burnley? You think back to Burnley played Aberdeen last season in the Europa League. There's a lot of very well organised average teams in the Premier League. So Celtic wouldn't have anything, or Rangers wouldn't have anything to fear playing the likes of Burnley or even West Brom we mentioned there, who have come up. But that's where I'm going to leave it there before, you know.
The Celtic contingent of the office will be going mad. Steve-O and Enda, I think, or?
No, as I said, like, the debate has been had for years and years, and I've always been of the idea is that Celtic or Rangers just use their fan base and gradually they build into big Premier League clubs. That's what I think a lot of Celtic and Rangers fans would point towards. They're not trying to claim that the current squads would do really well in the Premier League at the moment.
Yeah, it's a good point. Right. We brought you news earlier in the week that Juve boss Andrea Pirlo has told Aaron Ramsey he is not part of his plans. Today's papers say you can add Higuain and Sami Khedira to that list. They are free to leave the club, according to Goal. Now, our friends over at La Gazzetta dello Sport report that Paulo Dybala could also be part of the Italian legends clear-out, and that Manchester United and Spurs could be offered the Argentinian for £100 million. Who should sign Dybala, and should any Premier League side chase Higuain or Khedira?
Well, I'd say in terms of Higuain, he's probably sitting by his phone waiting for the phone to ring when Maurizio Sarri gets his next gig. That's what they tend to do. He only scored 8 goals for Juve. So we saw him with Chelsea, pretty much hit and miss. But Khedira had a few injuries. Dybala is the one, obviously, that has been linked. I remember on deadline day last year, it looked like Spurs were getting him. I mean, this is one of the rumours that was going around, that he was going to be a Spurs player. Can Spurs afford him now? I'm not so sure. There's a link with Harry Winks to Manchester City, which maybe that frees up money. Obviously, Højbjerg's come in. I said it during the week. I think Højbjerg is a player that Mourinho wants in midfield, a ball winner, a bit more steel. Harry Winks is more of a footballing midfielder, and was kind of one of those players you identified when Mourinho took over that might be in danger of losing his place. So if Mourinho wants to get rid of him and get some funds, but I mean, by all accounts, we're pretty much told Spurs don't have the money. They obviously put it all into the stadium. They can't fill the stadium for obvious reasons at the moment. So it's hard to imagine where they get the money to finance this. Are they talking about a loan deal maybe?
Potentially. We told you, moving on earlier in the week, that West Ham had laughed at Chelsea's £50 million offer for England's Declan Rice. That is right. Karen Brady had a good old chortle at that particular offer. Shane, this is for you. The Times now report that it will cost £80 million to buy the versatile 21-year-old. Should Manchester United sign Declan Rice?
I mean, we talk about price tags. If Harry Maguire is worth £80 million, then surely Declan Rice is worth £80 million. They may wait another week or two to see if this Jadon Sancho deal falls away, to see how much funds are available. Obviously, as Phil mentioned, United can afford players like Declan Rice. It will mean the likes of Juan Mata and Jesse Lingard are straight away gone from that team. But I think they'd be crazy not to be included in that conversation. Jack Grealish is probably looking at this going, that should be me. We've stopped talking about Jack Grealish. Jack Grealish was number one on Deal or No Deal for, I think, the last 3 or 4 weeks, and now he's just been forgotten for Declan Rice. So it's not the first time we've mentioned those two in the same conversation either. But Rice will bring a serious amount to Old Trafford, and undoubtedly he's a hell of a player. But I think it all rests on where the Sancho thing goes. It's
if we had to compile our Deal or No Deal top 5 of the year, like the sounds of the summer: Jack Grealish, Jadon Sancho, Declan Rice, Thiago Alcantara. They're the top 4. Who will be
on a loop?
The way this transfer market is going, we'll have a Christmas number 1 at on our Deal or No Deal section. Right, we've got another one here. This is an interesting one, Phil. Atletico Madrid's 27-year-old goalkeeper Jan Oblak spoke to AS ahead of last night's match. When asked about interest from Chelsea, he said, "It's not the time to talk about that. Right now we've got Leipzig to think about. I'll assess the season when it's over, and hopefully we've got 3 games left. There'll be time after that to talk." Spoiler, Jan, you don't have 3 more games left in the season. Your season's done, mate. He is under contract until 2023 and has a release clause of £110 million. Transfer Market estimate that his market value is £72 million, and Atletico say they have no interest in selling. Do you think he'll come to London?
No. I think he's one of the best keepers in the world. We saw that particularly in the second leg against Liverpool at Anfield, how important he was. It wasn't like, you look at the winning goal that Atletico conceded last night, there was very little he could do about it. So, Atletico are brilliant defensively. Unless Oblak decides after last night, you know what, it's great and all, keeping all these clean sheets, but I'm not winning anything anymore with Atletico. And Simeone, the feeling, like you were watching the game last night and João Felix obviously comes on, changes the way Atletico are playing, but you have to ask yourself, why is he on the bench? And that's purely down to the way Simeone wants to play. So he's not going to change. There was hope that when he signed Felix that, this was going to signal the change in how Simeone plays the game. But these guys don't change. It's like when Jose Mourinho gets a job, I'm going to be different. No, they revert back to the norm straight away. As soon as points are at stake and there's pressure on, they'll always go back to default mode. So if Jan Oblak decides that he's happy enough to keep all these clean sheets, has a good defence in front of him, doesn't concede many goals, yeah, stay at Atletico Madrid. If he wants to win trophies, maybe he decides to go. But I don't know, like the fact that Chelsea have paid more than 70 million for Kepa, is there a possibility they could get onto Atletico and say we'd do some sort of a swap deal with you? But Kepa looks so far off where Oblak is at the moment. I wouldn't fancy whoever's trying to negotiate that deal.
Yeah, the fact that you mentioned, Phil, as well, the defence that he has in front of him at Atletico Madrid, like the days of 1-0 Chelsea under Mourinho are long over. He would have a bit more of a leaky defence in front of him if he joined Chelsea. And as you mentioned, £70 million for Kepa, that backfired massively. So I think they'll be reluctant to dish out, what is it, £110 million on someone like Jan Oblak. Granted, he's the best keeper in the world, in my opinion, but a serious bit of money to be lumping on a goalkeeper. But no, it's a 2 out of 10 that he'll be at Chelsea.
Lads, thanks a million for Deal or No Deal this morning. A pleasure as ever. Phil, we'll chat to you again next week. I should say OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead.